Okay, welcome folks. It's been a while since I have done a class. Mostly I've focused on Hebrew, but I want to take a little break from the Hebrew and try to get back to this Lilith theory. If you have seen my videos before, then you'll probably be familiar with what we've discussed up to this point. But if you haven't, then all you need to do is go to this here. Let's see here. Go to YouTube, Hebrew Messianic Israel. Okay, and you should see it here somewhere. Well, maybe you can't find it that way. I guess what we'll do here is put it in this way. And okay, so it's looks like it's this one right here. Try to find a better way to, I think what I'm going to do is, I think if you go to YouTube and put Hebrew Messianic Israel in here, it'll come up. See, under channels. I probably should have had this figured out earlier on. But this is what it looks like. And I'm going to put the link. I guess I'm going to put the link in okay, we'll stick it here. Edit post. The preview here. Okay. I guess that's the best way you can do it. Hey, welcome, Kenneth. How you doing, brother? Just trying to get this set up here. You know, YouTube is offering tags for their YouTube channels, and I think I need to get one because it's very difficult to navigate to the channel that I have that has all my videos on it. And apparently they've got a newfangled way of finding YouTube channels with just like a handle. So this morning, I just wanted to complete a little more of this Lilith. And we're going to start here at 3.8. And if you have any comments or questions, we can look up the scriptures and see what we can come up with here. So I'm going to start here in, this is page 47 down here at the bottom. And it says here, one of the more profound evidences for the existence of Lilith comes in Genesis 2:18. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Okay. Okay, so let's down here to this one. And Yahweh said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make a helpmeet for him. Okay, interesting. Get rid of this here. So in the literal Hebrew of the verse, Yahweh declares that it was not good that Adam had become alone. Oh, it says in the Hebrew, it says had become alone. Okay, so it probably has to do with the verb form here. This means that before Eve's creation, there existed a period of time where Adam was not alone and had a companion. Furthermore, some event must have transpired to make him become alone. Only Lilith's legend explains these facts. She was the man's initial companion, and he became alone after she rebelled. Okay, so And the literal translation of Genesis 2:18 in table 3 through 7, the key word, this should be revealing probably. He's got a spelling error there. That the man became alone is, looks like hayot. Okay, so let's take a look at that in the Hebrew. Okay, Genesis 2:18. All right, so let's see here. There it is right there. Let's see, what is he talking about here, Genesis? Is this in the key word revealing that the man became alone is hayot. It's the third person perfect tense of the verb haya, Strong's 1961, which means to become. Thus, hayot means he became, he had become. This indicates that the man had become alone at some point in the past. Thus, he was not always alone and must have had a companion before Eve. Okay, what I wanted to find here is, it's probably the table's probably on the next page. Lilith is the only viable explanation for this previous companion. The man had become lonely after she rebelled and fled the garden. For this reason, Yahweh laments that the man had become alone and purposes to make a new companion for him. Okay, so here it is right here. So this is probably where it's at. Let's see, Vayomer, Yahweh, Elohim, lo, that means not, Tov, Hayot, he had become, there it is. Ha'adam, Labdu, okay, so this is in 2:18. Let's see here. I'm trying to find where that's at. There it is right there. That should be. Okay. Hayot. There it is. Okay, let's take a look at that there real quick. Come to pass. Look at that. Become or be, to fall out, to come to pass. Comes from Haya. Okay, so it's using Hayot. Maybe it's taken on this right here, come to pass or become. If you were to say became alone, that implies there was a previous time when he was not alone. Okay, so the notion that Adam became alone also solves two nagging theological issues. First, why would Yahweh create Adam alone, especially when Yahweh created companions for all the animals? Wow, that's an interesting thought. In addition, why were the beasts of the field searched with any real hope of finding a suitable helpmate for the man? The answer to the first is that the man was not created alone. He was created with a companion, Lilith, who rebelled and fled. Well, that's an interesting thought there. In addition, why were the beasts of the field searched with any real hope of finding a suitable helpmate for the man? I often wondered about that myself. The answer to the first is that the man was not created alone. He was created with a companion, Lilith, who rebelled and fled. Moreover, the beasts of the field were searched for a companion because the man's fled companion, the serpent Lilith, was considered one of these beasts of the field. Recall, the serpent was called a beast of the field. Wow. Genesis 3:1. Okay, let's take a look at that. Okay, so there it is. The serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field. Hasadeh, there it is right there, Hasadeh, which had made Yahweh Elohim. He said to the woman, indeed has said Yahweh not, you shall eat of every tree of the garden. Okay, so Lilith's legend also helps explain the timing of Eve's creation. Eve was created immediately following the man's failed search among the beasts of the field. We have already seen that the serpent Lilith must have been summoned at this time and that Adam must have given her a name. Adam's naming of the creatures demonstrates his mastery and lordship over them. Let's see if I can. Thus, Adam naming of Lilith would denote an act of mastery over her. We could certainly expect Lilith's utter rebellion at this point, for she would not submit to the man by her demonic nature. In her utter rebellion, she became physically transformed into a winged creature. Indeed, after this point, the Bible refers to Lilith as the winged serpent flying before Elohim, okay? At this point, reconciliation with Adam is impossible, and thus Eve is made in the immediately following verses, okay? So why did Yahweh wait until this moment of utter rebellion by Lilith to replace her with Eve? Like Lucifer, Lilith had the right to choose her destiny. Even though she was defiled by the mist, Yahweh blessed her and told her to multiply with the man and fill the earth. Genesis 1:28. Remember that one. Okay. And blessed them Elohim and said to them, Elohim, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Okay, so this probably has to do with where it says he made them. So Yahweh created Ha-Adam, look at that, in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created Bara. Look at that. Okay, so we have Ha-Adam. Literally, that means of the earth, Ha-Adam. Or like from the, let's see, where does that come from? It has to do with, well, it means like ruddy and red, Ha-Adam. And let's see, I saw somewhere that there was a connection to the earth there, but I don't want to belabor that. He created him male and female. Look at that. It says Oto, and that is a masculine singular sense. Oto. Zachar v'nichva. There's v'nichva, which is the female word in Hebrew. Zachar v'nichva. Okay, all right. Okay, so Lilith legend also helps explain the timing of Eve's creation. Eve was created immediately following the man's failed search among the beasts of the field. We have already seen that the serpent Lilith must have been summoned at this time and that Adam must have given her a name. Adam's naming of the creatures demonstrates his mastery and lordship over them. Okay, so we already got to that. Let's start here. Why did Yahweh wait until this moment of utter rebellion by Lilith to replace her with Eve, like Lucifer? Okay, we did that. We did the Genesis 1:28. The man was given ascendancy over the woman, but through Adam, she could inherit Yahweh's blessings. Even though Yahweh knew Lilith would ultimately rebel against Adam, Yahweh waited for her actual utter rebellion to take place before judging her for it. By his holy and just nature, Yahweh does not punish the sinner before the sin. After Lilith's irreversible rebellion, Yahweh took the step of creating her replacement, Eve. Note that this theory implies that before Lilith's utter rebellion at this point, she was in a defiant yet not wholly rebellious state, at least from Adam's perspective. Okay, she was in a defiant yet not wholly rebellious state, at least from Adam's perspective. This is consistent with the Lilith legend, which states she repeatedly refused Adam before finally transforming herself at one fateful encounter by uttering the holy name of Yahweh. Okay, so that's all in the Lilith legends. Okay, let's see here. A helpmate was shown to Adam before Eve. We are not finished with the evidences for a previous helpmate in Genesis 2:18. Perhaps the most provocative evidence for Lilith in the Bible comes in the second half of the verse. As shown in the literal translation of table 3-8, the literal Hebrew concludes with an amazing statement. It states that a helpmate was shown to Adam before Eve existed. The key word leading to this interpretation is keneged. Kenegedif. It literally means as shown before him. Okay, so the root word is neged, or its sister negad, Strong's 5048, 5046. Neged means before, as in being in front of something. Negad means to show. Neged and negad are essentially the same word with different implied shades of meaning. When something is placed neged before a person, it is negad shown unto him. Kenegetiv is the neged root prefixed with the kaf, inseparable preposition meaning as, and suffixed by a vav, singular masculine pronominal suffix meaning him. Thus, kenegetiv literally means as shown him, or as set before him. Perhaps it is best to just combine both shades of meaning into a composite translation, as shown before him. Okay, so we have asaha, I shall make, lo, for him, etser, a help, and then kenegetiv, as shown before him. Look at that. So that's in, let's see, what verse is that in? That's in Genesis 2:18. Okay, so it's here. Let's see here. Kenegetiv. There it is right there. So I will make him a helper suitable. Kenegetiv. Okay, in front of, in sight of, opposite to. Okay. Okay, so the point here is that it states that the helpmeet was shown to Adam before Eve existed, okay, based upon that word, kenegetiv. Interesting. As seen in the literal translation below, in the word-by-word breakdown in table 3 through 9, the phrase "a help is shown before him" is used again in Genesis 2:20. Let's see. Vela Adam, lo, matzah, etzer, kenegetiv, as shown before him. Okay. All right, so interesting. So the point is that in the Hebrew, it's implying that a helpmeet was shown before Adam, before Eve was even created, basically into the very Hebrew itself. Table 3:9, a transliteration of Genesis 2:20. The use of kenegetiv in verses 18 and 20 has long puzzled translators and commentators. Although the word's literal meaning is simple enough to understand, its implication is perplexing. The literal Hebrew implies that Adam had personally seen a previous mate right in front of his face. Traditional interpreters go to great lengths to explain this. They got to find a way to get around it, I guess. They are forced to revert to tortured Hebrew and allegory to explain the literal Hebrew. The King James Version goes so far as to completely ignore the word in its translation of both verses. Many commentators hold that kenegetiv indicates that Adam's helpmeet would be before him, near, close, and personal. However, these explanations would really only make sense with the absence of the kaf preposition. Adam Clark attempts to explain kenegetiv as implying that Eve would be standing before or opposite to Adam in the sense of being one like or as himself. However, having kenegetiv to connote this allegorical meaning is tortured Hebrew. Rashi argues a similar meaning for the word in that it indicates opposite and opposed to him. Rashi explains that this meant that if he is worthy, she shall be a help to him. If he is unworthy, she shall be opposed to him, to fight him. Thus suffers similar problems to Clark's translation and provides a completely unsubstantiated claim for what the word implies. All explanations outside of the Lilith legend fail to address the literal Hebrew of verses 18 and 20. These passages are clear that Yahweh was going to make for Adam a help as shown before him. This implies that before Eve even existed, a helpmate stood before Adam and was shown to him. Besides Lilith, nothing can explain this previous woman. Interesting. Okay, so Adam declares Eve was a second creation. Okay, one of the more astounding evidences for Lilith comes from Adam's own lips in Genesis 2:23. Although it is not Although it is not clear from the King JV below, it is in the original Hebrew. When Adam first awakes from his slumber to discover the newly created Eve, he compares Eve's creation to a previous one. And Adam said, this is in the King James, this is now hapa'am, bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. The key word in verse 23 that implies a previous creation is hapa'am. The King James translates this verse as now, but this is not accurate. Hapa'am stems from the root pa'am plus an indefinite hey article. So that's the something. Definite hey article is the something. The King James V often just translates hapa'am, and pa'am is simply as time or now, as in Genesis 2:23. But the words more properly mean occurrence. Hapa'am especially refers to the case of something that happened before, repeating again at this time. Perhaps the fullest English translation is at this repetition. The meaning of at this repetition is clearly supported by the word's repeated use throughout the Bible. The hapa'am variant is used 12 times in the Bible, and in each instance, it's used to denote the subsequent repeat of an event after its first occurrence. Wow. For example, the first use of hapa'am elsewhere in the Bible comes in Genesis 18:32. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so we have a Yomer, and he said, all not please, be angry. Okay, so let's get down here to where it's at. There it is right there. Look at this. This is the discussion that Abraham has with the angel on the way to Sodom and Gomorrah, when the angel is discussing how he's going to destroy, and we believe this to be in the pre-incarnate Yeshua himself. And he said, not please be angry, the master Adonai, and I will speak but once more. There it is, ha'apam. So it's definitely used in these other places as a repetition, not as a first occurrence, but as a repeating aspect. Okay, so, all right. The passage follows a long series of questions that Abraham had asked Yahweh. Yahweh has patiently responded to these questions. Verse 32, Abraham asked Yahweh to tolerate his final speaking, hapa'am, at this repetition, which is rendered this once in the King James V. In the verse hapa'am clearly refers to the latest occurrence of a repeating event, namely Abraham's continuing series of questions to Elohim. And he said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet, but this once, hapa'am, but this once, look at that. Peradventure 10 shall be found here, and he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. Okay, so the meaning hapa'am is also demonstrated in its next three uses in Genesis 29:34, 29:35, and 30:20. Let's take a look at 29:34. Okay, and she conceived again and bore a son and said, now at last, there it is. Look at this, hapa'am. Now at last, they translate it as at last will become attached my husband to me. Interesting. So it's a linear aspect here. It's a concurrent aspect being implied here in this okay. So let's see here. 29:35. Let's take a look at that one. The next one here. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, now, hapa'am. Look at that. There it is again. Now I will praise et Yahweh. Okay. Upon thus she called his name Judah. She stopped bearing. Okay. So this is a story that has to do with Leah Jacob's wife, one of his wives, she's the lesser loved, and she knows it, and she continues to bear children, hoping that with enough children that Jacob will see the value of her, that she is a fruitful bough, that she is producing children. And so it uses this word hapa'am, which is a reoccurrent idea. Same one that's used here in Genesis 2:23. Wow. Okay, so let's take a look at the last one here, 30:20. Okay, oops. Okay, so Genesis 30:20. Okay, and said Leah has endowed Elohim me with endowment. Said that. Okay, good. Now will dwell. Okay, so there it is. Hapam. Now will dwell with me, my husband. Look at that. So it's used in all of these occurrences to imply reoccurrence, because this same scenario was happening previously with all the other sons. You know, Leah was bearing a son, thinking, oh, he'll love me now, but he didn't show her any favor. She bared another son. Oh, he'll love me now. He didn't show her any favor. Oh, she bared another son. Oh, he'll love me now, and so on and so forth. Okay, so in these passages, Leah is explaining how after the birth of each of her sons, hapa'am, this time or now in the King James, something would change. So once again, we see the hapa'am refers to the latest occurrence of a repeating event. Note that the birth of Leah's first son does not use hapa'am. This is because, look at that. This is because by the word's definition, it would not be appropriate to use it for the initial event of a sequence. Look at that. Or it has not yet repeated. The further solidifies hapa'am as meaning at this repetition. The remaining instance of hapa'am in the Bible, okay, so Genesis 46:30, Exodus 9:27, 10:17, looks like Jude. What is this J-U-D? Judges, rather. Yeah, it's got to be Judges. Demonstrate the same uses, this repetitive usage. A study of the parent word shows it is essentially the same meaning also. Here's Genesis 29:34, and she conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time, hapa'am, will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons, and therefore his name called Levi. Here it is in Genesis 29:35. She conceived again and bare a son, and she said, now, hapa'am, will I praise Yahweh. Therefore she called his name Judah and left bearing. Genesis 20:30, and Leah said, Yahweh hath endued me and endued me with a good dowry. Now, hapa'am, will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. She called his name Zebulun. Okay, so given the above understanding of hapa'am, it is clear in Genesis 2:23 that Adam's remark about Eve's creation being hapa'am is in reference to a previous creation, namely Lilith. Wow, that is interesting. Okay, before I carry on, let me check one thing here. See here. All right. All right, so got a little bit of a cough going on. All right, so given the above understanding of hapa'am is clear in Genesis 2:23 that Adam's remark about Eve's creation being hapa'am is in reference to a previous creation, and who is the only option? Well, the Lilith theory. My literal translation of the passages below, table 310 gives a word-by-word breakdown of the translation. Note the Eve is repeatedly referred by the odd pronoun this. Interesting. In the passage, apparently because the origins of her title as woman were being discussed, the Hebrew word for woman, Isha, is thus Eve's original name before being renamed Chava later by Adam. Okay. Genesis 2:23, and the man said, this, Eve, is as this repetition, bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh, for this Eve shall be called Isha, because from man this Eve was taken. Interesting. Okay, so let's take a look at this over here. Vayomer ha'adam. I keep getting these text messages, I think. It never fails. Something is beeping here. Okay. Vayomer, and he said, Ha'adam, the man, zot this, hapa'am. Here it is in this reposition. There it is, hapa'am. Etsem, bone, etsemi, from my bone. The bashar, ifshari, from my flesh. Okay, lezot, for this. Ichro shall be called Isha. There it is, Isha, ki, because may ish, from man, lechach, she was taken. That comes from lachach, to take. Lachach, this, zot. Okay, so table 310, a literal translation of Genesis 2:23. Given the literal Hebrew, the passage must be understood as saying that the man awakes and exclaims at this repetition is this, Eve, bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh, because it uses this word right here. Ha-pa'am. I don't know if I can, yeah, I can circle it here. So in the very discussion of Eve, if I can get this out of the way, there we go. All right, so here's the word right this, ha-pa'am, which we have already previously shown uses as it's a final event in a reoccurrence of events. It's a reoccurring verb. And the English translators and the commentators are not honest with it. Obviously, because it would rock their world if this particular theory were taken into account, and that would fit nicely then within the Hebrew. Okay, so table 310, a literal translation of Genesis 2:23, given the literal Hebrew, the passage must be understood in saying that the man awakes, exclaims, at this repetition is this Eve, bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh. From this, it appears that Adam was expecting his replacement mate to be created from the dust of the earth, like Lilith. Look at that. But instead, his new mate was created from his own flesh. She was not a creation from the dust. Interesting. Okay, and that does seem to fit pretty well in there. Let's take a look at this here. I find that there is only one semi-plausible refutation to the implication of ha'pa'am referring to Lilith's creation. One might argue that Adam may have been referring to his own previous creation with ha'pa'am. Adam may have been expecting Eve to be created like him from the dust, but ha'pa'am at this iteration, Yahweh created her from Adam's flesh and bone. However, this counter-argument suffers because the grammatical appropriateness of Adam using the term ha'pa'am is diminished. The parallelism of a repeated event required by ha'pa'am is simply weaker in comparing Adam's creation to Eve's than it is in comparing Lilith's creation to that of a replacement Eve. So there's a juxtaposition here that presents a problem for the rebuttal argument, because it's not taking the same. It's like an apples and oranges situation here to accept the rebuttal argument that ha'pa'am in this case was not referring to a final reoccurrence of a series of events. So that's interesting. Okay, so there is one final amusing note to make on the passage. Verse 23 relates that Adam's initial name for Eve was Isha, Strong's 802, meaning woman. He gave her this name because she was taken out of Ish. Okay, Ish would be in reference to the man, would be in reference to himself, Adam. Isha is merely a feminine form of Ish. And even today in Hebrew, if especially while in ancient Hebrew, it was such that even the word for wife and woman were the same word, Isha. Interesting. Ish is a very common word to denote a man in the Bible, is used 1,432 times, 1,432 times. However, verse 23 is the first time it is used in the Bible. Before that time, only the name Adam and the term Ha-Adam, the man, are used to denote the man. At this point, would not it have been more appropriate for Adam to say, I shall call you Adamah, because out of Adam you were taken? Look at that. Or I shall call you Ha-Adamah, because out of Adam you were taken? Because he would have, if these more logical names, because he would have, if these more logical names had not already been taken by Lilith. Interesting. Okay, so 311, the serpent was the most cunning mammal. Starting with this section, we now enter a series of discussions examining the various biblical evidences identifying Lilith as the infamous serpent of the garden. The first evidences we shall discuss are those that dispel the myth that the serpent must be a reptilian snake demonically inhabited by Lucifer. This is a rather big hurdle to overcome, as in some circles, this popular notion may be quite entrenched. The popularity of the notion no doubt began with the King James Version's choice to render the Hebrew word nachash as serpent, thereby invoking the image of a snake to the reader. Dispelling this popular identification is made more difficult because a snake also seemingly explains Yahweh's curse upon the serpent to crawl upon its belly and eat dust, as the flicking tongue of the snakes appeared to taste the ground. However, as we shall see, the passage quite clearly state that the serpent was a mammal. Moreover, it was the most intelligent and cunning of all mammals. Lilith best describes this most cunning animal. Okay, seems like I'm always getting calls. All right, so where were we? Okay, Lilith best describes this most cunning animal. The first indication that the serpent was not a snake comes from a simple logical exercise. If it was Yahweh's curse that transformed the serpent into a snake that must go upon its belly and eat dust, then the serpent could not have been a snake before the curse. Obviously, Yahweh's curse for it to go upon its belly would have been pointless. Okay, as it would have no detrimental impact upon the creature. That's interesting. And I think they get around that. The counter argument gets around that by saying that snakes at one time had legs and they would skitter around on legs. It was like a long creature with legs. And that what Yahweh did when he cursed, in their argument, when he cursed the snake, is that the legs shriveled up instantly and it fell down on its belly and it slithered through the dust. That's essentially the idea of the counter argument to this. Okay. Otherwise, that's actually what they teach in the churches that I grew up in when I asked that question. Otherwise, Yahweh's curse for it to go upon its belly would have been pointless, as it would have no detrimental impact upon the creature. The Sofield Study Bible makes the same position. Sofield writes, the serpent in his Edenic form is not to be thought of as a writhing reptile. That is the effect of the curse. The creature which lent itself to Satan may well have been the most beautiful, as it the most subtle creature, less than man. Therefore, even under the most entrenched position that the post-curse serpent refers to a snake, the pre-curse serpent must have been something else that walked on legs. Yep, I was right. Okay, so this is what they teach. The position that the post-curse serpent was a snake provides absolutely no clue to suggest what it might have been before its cursing. Now, some even go so far as to say that it was like a dragon, and it all shriveled up and its wings came in or whatever, its legs came in, and it just became that snake. I've seen some really fantastic explanations. Note that I do not hold that the serpent was transformed into a snake at its cursing. Rather, Yahweh's cursing of its belly and its eating of the dust refers to the mystical elements of the bitter water trial, to which Yahweh is subjecting the serpent Lilith. This shall be discussed in detail in section 320. Does the biblical text provide any clue as to who or what the serpent was? Yes, it does. Genesis 3:1 states that the serpent was the most cunning beast of the field, or Hayot Hasadeh. The Hayot Hasadeh are the final creatures created by Yahweh on creation day 5. Except for Adam, they are the highest life forms on the planet. This is so because Genesis describes Yahweh as continuously creating more and more complex life throughout each creation day. The beasts of the field are the culmination of this creation event. These would essentially be mammals: mice, cats, dogs, wolves, bears. Interesting. They have large, complex brains and are soulless creatures who have the ability to display emotion. This emotional capability is confirmed in Job 40:20, which says the Hayot Hasadeh play with each other when food is plentiful. Look at that. Hayot Hasadeh. So the Hasadeh would be in the field. So it'd be like creatures of the field, or the life forms in the field. Life, literally, that it suggests life forms in the field. And there is no want. The characterization of Hayot Hasadeh as higher mammals is confirmed throughout the Bible. The term appears 24 times in the Bible, and in each appearance is obviously applied to mammals who eat crops or hunt humans, okay? So in other words, lions. The emotional and intellectual capacity of the Hayot Hasadeh, or the life forms of the field, is why only they and birds were brought before Adam as potential companions in Genesis 3. Look at that. Remember that? Where the search went around for a life form to be a companion for Adam, and none was found. Only with these soulless creatures could Adam hope to have any type of emotional co-relationship. Interesting. Well, that opens up a can of worms right there, doesn't it? A literal translation of Genesis 3:1 is provided below, as well as King James Version. Breakdown of the word-by-word Hebrews provided in table 311. It is quite clear from the passage that the serpent is a member from all the beasts of the field. Thus, the serpent could not be a snake. It must be a mammal. Okay, so this is Genesis 3:1. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahweh Elohim had made. Here's Genesis 3:1, my literal. And the serpent became crafty from all the beasts of the field, which Yahweh Elohim had made. Okay, so Vachanachash, and the serpent, Hayah, let's see, crafty, Michol, let's see, looks like Hayot, maybe, possibly, beasts. Yeah, so Hayot would be like, that's what this is right here, Hayot. Hasadeh, of the field, Asher, that or which, Asa, may, that comes from that verb Asa, to make or do. And there's Yod-He Vav-He, which would be Yahweh, more properly transliterated. He doesn't understand the Keri and the Katib concept in this book, and so he transliterates it this way. Probably, but also maybe he does understand it, and he just transliterates it as what is commonly accepted in many of the churches. Okay, so Elohim. Okay, so what is saying here is the serpent became crafty from all the beasts of the field, which Yahweh Elohim had made. And yeah, here it is. Hayah, to become. It comes from, Hayah is like a verb form, to be. To be, it means to become. And our crafty. Okay, at this point, it's fascinating to realize that Lilith will logically be classified as the most intelligent beast of the field. She would not be fully classified as human, because that requires she bear the image and spirit of Elohim like Adam. Wow. Lilith bore the image and spirit of her father, Lucifer. Thus, she would be more beast than human. Isn't that interesting? Nevertheless, she would definitely be classified as the most cunning of these beasts. She possessed a complete human body and mind, and she would have access to the amazing animating spirit of Lucifer within her. To call her the most crafty and subtle creature from all the beasts of the field would be very apt. Well, Lucifer is known as the deceiver. He is crafty, very crafty and cunning. Lilith alone aptly fulfills. It's almost like, you know what, even in Greek mythology, Norse mythology. Think of the character Loki. He's like the antithesis of Thor. And what is it? The father is I can't remember the name in Norse mythology, but it's almost like these kinds of narratives are repeated in every culture, in essence. Okay. Let's see here. I think we stopped here. Lilith alone aptly fulfills the description of the serpent as a beast of the field. Otherwise, one must conclude that the serpent was a primate, chimp, or orangutan, as these are generally considered intelligent mammals on the earth outside of man. Oh, very interesting here to discuss. Very interesting. Hey, brother, welcome.
Hey, shalom.
Hey. Well, I got started on this Lilith teaching again, or the theory, I should say.
Very nice. I will listen in. Sorry for joining late, but I'm just glad to join.
Oh, that's all right. All right. So basically, we've covered some of the aspects we covered earlier. You could probably see on the recording, because I am recording this live, but I'm also recording on YouTube. But essentially what we're talking about is the various evidences in the Hebrew text relative to, number one, this term hapa'am earlier reflects a reoccurrence of event, the reoccurrence of event. And that is the word that's used when it talks about Yahweh creating Eve from Adam's body, literally from his literally it says in the English from his rib, took a rib or something from his body. It could mean he took genetic material from him and created Eve. And the Hebrew word is hapa'am. It means a reoccurrence. Thus, the implication is that because this is a reoccurrence, there had to have been a previous occurrence. And it's the same word that's used when Leah talks about, now my husband Jacob will love me because I have sired him a son. And she goes through all of this. It uses that same hapa'am for every son. Now he'll love me, as in a reoccurrence. So now we're here talking about the serpent, and the aspect that the serpent itself is a higher form of mammal in that category. And extremely intelligent. Implication within the Lilith theory is that Lilith, being animated by the animating mist of Hasatan himself, took upon his nature of being extremely crafty and cunning. Okay, so now we'll continue on 3:12, the serpent's extreme intelligence and ability to speak. The serpent's extreme intelligence and ability to speak can really only be explained by it being human. The Lilith legend provides the only plausible origin for this human. Could this serpent have been an ordinary animal that was somehow supernaturally given the power of speech? The evidence says no. The literal Hebrew of Genesis 3:1 states that the serpent itself is intelligent and crafty among all the mammals. It is not an indwelling It is not an indwelling demonic spirit that imparts the serpent with these abilities. Intelligence and craftiness are innate in the creature. So in other words, the alternate theory, the other theory suggests that somehow the serpent was elevated by a demonic spirit, perhaps even Satan himself, and therefore given the ability to not only speak, but speak in a very crafty manner, to ensnare Eve and then Adam. But the Lilith understanding, the Lilith theory suggests that because Lilith was created as a higher level animal and animated by the mist of Hasatan, then she took upon him the abilities of speech and intelligence. And in that theory, in that she was made initially as a helpmeet for Adam, therefore she would be to the level to where Adam could communicate with her. Indeed, the general tenor of Genesis implies the serpent's intelligence and ability to speak is not supernatural, unexpected, but rather the natural created state of the being. It certainly did not surprise Adam or Eve to see the serpent talking. Isn't that something? Eve held a long discussion with the serpent and was deceived by it. It is inconceivable that she would express no surprise or inquire over seeing an animal speaking. Now, the counter argument to that is this. There are some Jewish esoteric works which imply that perhaps Adam was able to communicate with animals, and thereby the implication being that animals had some form of speech, but it could have been something that was outside of the realm of physical speech. It could have been simply from a spiritual standpoint, sensing and communicating spiritually with animals. I say that because even today, there are people reputedly, perhaps even in the horse realm, they're called horse whisperers. They have an ability they have an uncanny ability to communicate with a horse, to get the horse to do exactly what he wants to do, to get the horse to understand and be able to understand back what the horse is going through. They pay these people all kinds of money in these $1 million barns to come in and find out what's going on with their horse. Okay, whether that has legitimacy or whether it's all a scam, I don't know. But it is interesting within the same subject area. Okay, so there's only one instance in the Bible of an animal speaking through some type of supernatural intervention. In that case, the feat was meant to astonish the witness. The event comes in Numbers 22:28-30, where there Jehovah opens the mouth of Balaam's ass to rebuke its rider. Okay. Or rather Yahweh, not Jehovah, Yahweh opens the mouth of Balaam's ass to rebuke its rider. Yahweh is using the ass to demonstrate the spiritual blindness which had come over Balaam, whose ways have become perverse to Elohim. So let's take a look at this. Numbers 22:28. Okay. So, and opened Yahweh, et P, the mouth, the donkey, okay, Tomer, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me this 3 times? Okay, so let's see what the literal Hebrew in Genesis 3:1 states the serpent himself. Okay, it's on. Okay, so where is the part where it says? Okay, there we go. There's only one instance in the Bible of an animal speaking through some type of supernatural intervention, and in that case, the feat was meant to astonish the witness. Okay, so what he's saying here essentially is that Adam and Eve, neither one of them were surprised that the so-called serpent, it's actually in the Hebrew, it's Nachash, could speak and intelligently relate and intelligently reason. And that it's the point, he's pointing out that there's only one other case in the Bible where there's a supernatural intervention. And that's the instance of Balaam and his ass. There Yahweh opens the mouth of Balaam's ass to rebuke its rider. Yahweh is using the ass to demonstrate the spiritual blindness which had come over Balaam, whose ways had become perverse to Elohim. The ass was able to see an armed angel blocking the way, but Balaam was not. Elohim supernaturally gave the ass speech as a rebuke to Balaam. The absurdity of a talking ass, wiser than its rider, was meant to impress upon Balaam how perverse he had become. While it is certainly conceivable that Lucifer could manifest similar power and cause the serpent to speak, Adam and Eve's shock at the sight should have certainly matched Balaam's. Wow. Okay, but they're not shocked. Neither Eve nor Adam expressed any astonishment at seeing the serpent speak. The serpent must have been human and must have had an innate ability. They were completely used to it. They were speaking as in a normal conversation. All right, the serpent became crafty, 3:13. Let me check on something here. Uh-oh. All right. Because I've got such a cold, I don't want to go too much beyond an hour. But I will return to this when I get myself feeling a little better. But I wanted to get started on something. Let's see what this, maybe I can complete this last little section here. Let's see here. Okay, so the serpent became crafty. One of the most provocative evidences that the serpent must be human comes from Genesis 3:1. It states that the serpent became crafty above all the beasts of the field. This means its mind became naked or exposed to devious thoughts. As we shall see, only a human mind can become crafty. Furthermore, the serpent's act of becoming naked to devious thoughts eerily mirrors Adam's act of coming to know both good and evil and his own nakedness by eating of the tree of knowledge. This strongly hints at the serpent being human and on par with Adam. Only Lilith can explain this other human on an equal basis with Adam. Genesis 3:1 states that the serpent became crafty. The Hebrew word for crafty is, looks like aruvim. As the Genesius Lexicon and others point out, aruvim is simply the past particle of the root aram. Thus, aram and aruvim are the same word. Strong should not have assigned separate numbers. Aram has two meanings. It can mean naked or it can mean prudent or crafty. Wow. Genesius holds that the root's most literal meaning is naked and that it also came to mean crafty in the sense that when one's mind is made naked to malevolent thoughts, it becomes crafty. Thus, to have a naked mind open to devious thoughts is to be crafty. Well, that has implication for the New Testament, when the New Testament admonishes believers to guard your thoughts, guard your mind against Ha-Satan. That aram has the dual meaning of naked and crafty is easily demonstrated. The exact root spelling of aruvim in Genesis 3:1. Let's see, arum appears 19 times in the Bible. Of these 19 times, the King James Version renders it 9 times as naked. The other 10 times, the King James Version renders it as prudent or crafty. Thus, the exact same word has two meanings. Based on its dual meanings, the actual meaning of aram in any passage can only be determined based on the context in which the word is used. Therefore, Genesis 3:1 can be poetically understood to say that the serpent became naked instead of became crafty. Well, this fits in with the Lilith legend because the Lilith legend suggests that when she rebelled against Adam, she fled and she was open then to evil forces already being present to align with her. Indeed, both statements are true. The serpent became naked of mind in order to become crafty. Why is this important? In Genesis 3:7, when Adam and Eve ate of the tree of knowledge, their eyes were opened and they knew they were naked. Thus, and this, you know what, this nakedness, it could literally mean from this aspect, could mean that Adam and Eve, it's like if you can think back as a child, a young child, a really young child before the age of accountability, you know, they go about doing things, they do things, they don't really think about them. You know, even a young child, as if he's young enough and he doesn't even know what he's doing, he's just going around doing whatever. You know, if in the horrific example of, let's say, a father leaves a gun out on the bedstand, and a young child goes out and he picks up that gun and waves it around, and maybe he pulls the trigger, and you've heard of tragedy happening. Okay, that the child is not guilty of anything because the child didn't even know what he was doing. He was just being a child. But once he gets old enough to understand consequences, the child gets up into 7, 8-year-old, or maybe even earlier, they understand consequences, then it's like their mind then is, oh, their eyes are open. Their eyes are open to evil, the consequences of bad things happening. This could be what it meant here. And this fits in very well with the notion that in the esoteric understanding of Adam and Eve, that or Adam primarily, before his fall, that they were creatures that were beyond the flesh. They were spiritual beings like angels. And that when they fell, when they were overcome by the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they then became naked, understanding the consequences of their actions, that they then were lowered in frequency and took upon them the physical nature, of flesh. They became physical. They came down out of the spiritual realm and became fleshly. So, thus, when Adam and Eve ate of the tree, they became arun, naked. Likewise, when the serpent became crafty, it became arun, naked of the mind. This poetic wordplay suggests that events surrounding the serpent becoming crafty must have been very similar to events in which Adam and Eve ate of the tree of knowledge. This notion is also supported by simple logic. When Adam and Eve ate, they also must have become crafty like the serpent, for they gained knowledge of good and evil, and their minds were opened, becoming exposed to devious thoughts. Look at that. They no longer had that higher frequency, that alignment with Elohim. They were lowered now and became susceptible to the serpents, which would be the Nachash. In Hebrew, they would be like the demons, or Hasatan himself. The parallelism between the serpent's craftiness and Adam and Eve's nakedness can be further demonstrated. Genesis 3:1 states that the serpent became crafty. Thus, the serpent was not always crafty, but through some transformative event, it became crafty. The Hebrew word for became is hayah. Strong's 1961. This is the same key root word. Section 3.8 showed that Adam had, let's see, hold on here. This is the same key root word, which in section 3.8 showed that Adam had become alone, The first time that Hayah appears spelled exactly as in Genesis 3:1, elsewhere in the Bible comes in Genesis 3:22. There it is stated that in eating of the tree of knowledge, the man Adam became Hayah as Elohim in knowing good and evil. His eyes were open. He recognized the consequences of his action. He recognized the brutal reality of evil and the consequence of evil. Thus, based on his PFA, this would be the principle of first association, I think is what he's saying. The mystical meaning of Hayah denotes the transformational event of a person beginning to know good and evil through eating of the tree of knowledge. This implies the serpent ate of the tree of knowledge and became crafty, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:22. And Yahweh Elohim said, behold, the man is become Hayah as one of us to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also the tree of life and eat and live forever. Wow. Interesting. What would have happened if Adam had not been cut off from the tree of life, and if he had lived forever, now being in that lower fleshly state? What would have happened? Well, I submit to you that he would have turned, or at least his descendants would have turned the earth onto even more of a hell on earth. The earth may not have even survived. And so I submit to you that man in his fleshly form, without that higher frequency, without that higher elemental spiritual state that angels are in, there are angels, in other words, angels, when I say angels, I'm talking about those that are within the realm of Yahweh, that everything that he would have done would have had a consequence for evil, virtually. All right, let's see here. Few details are available concerning the serpent Lilith's possible eating the tree of knowledge. Unlike Adam, for her, it was probably not a condemning event. There was no command given to her not to eat the tree of good knowledge. All right. Indeed, the serpent is only judged by Elohim for using his craftiness to deceive Eve and causing her and Adam to fall. Now, this does make sense in a fleshly sense, because women are by nature jealous. And have you heard stories where, let's say, something doesn't work out with a man marries a woman, it doesn't work out. I mean, it's irreconcilable differences. They get a divorce, but let's say they have a child, and then the man then goes to wife number 2 and marries her. Well, there's been stories where it's like the ex does everything she can to mess up the successive marriage. So that's kind of what we're talking about here with Lilith. So in summary, when Genesis related the serpent became crafty, it related some significant clues about the serpent. First, only a human mind can become crafty. Furthermore, the act of becoming crafty implies the serpent ate of the tree and became naked of mind, just as Adam ate of the tree and became naked with the knowledge of good and evil. This wordplay and parallelism between the serpent and Adam suggests that the serpent was human and on par with Adam. Only Lilith explains this human's origins. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. And for those of you who like these studies, you can always reach us at the Greenwood SC Yahad. Go to www.hmisrael.com. Okay, and you can reach out to me at shul@hmisrael.com. Send me some comments. What do you think about all this? You know, pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to see if I can continue with these studies, because you know what? There's a lot of parallel studies that it kind of gets my mind thinking. You know, the wheels are turning on a lot of other things that intersect with this subject. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this study. Remember, this is the Lilith theory, emphasis on theory, okay? I'm just going through this material just to see what you all think about this, and send me some feedback either on the Facebook Live or anything else. And there should also be there's a YouTube link on this. Got a lot of Hebrew classes and so on there. Also, you can Cash App us. Use that one right there, Cash App. My cash tag is hashtag. Actually, I think it's not hashtag. It's a $. Micromessianic. I think that's how it is in Cash App. All right, guys. Hey, any last words, Emerson, before I go?
Oh, I thought that was very interesting. One thing that I did struck me is came to my mind in the book of Jubilees when it talks about animals talking, or they lose their ability to talk in the day of shame when Adam had to have his and Hawa had to have their shame covered. So that's in Jubilees 3:27 through 30 for anyone wants to look that up.
Yeah,
And then
now that goes to the counter argument against Lilith, doesn't it? Because it implies that animals did have the ability to communicate with Adam. But
yeah, I guess you could say that.
Unless it's a community, I mean, I accept the Book of Jubilees as very relevant for this discussion, obviously.
Yeah, me too.
You know, and unless the communication was, as I suppose perhaps earlier, it was more like a spiritual, it was more like a kind of like a, well, the only example I can come up with is like on some of the Star Trek episodes. You have some of these creatures that can just communicate via mind and emotion.
Yeah, like telepathy.
Like the
Let me read
Betazoid, the
real quick.
Betazoid.
There you go.
You know,
It says here real quick, it says, and on that day on which Adam went out from the garden, he offered as a sweet fragrance an offering, frankincense, galbanum, and fragrant gum and spices in the morning with the rising of the sun from the day when he covered his shame. And on that day, the mouth of all beasts was closed, and of cattle, and of bird, and of whatever walks, and of whatever moves, so that they could no longer speak, for they had all spoken with one with another, with one lip and with one tongue.
wow, I love that.
That was when I read that for the first time. I really put in perspective, you know, how the donkey talks to the mad prophet Balaam, and then obviously the serpent. It's like I don't know. I think it's really interesting. We used to have a lot closer relationship with the animal kind. Makes sense,
Yeah,
you know, dominion over the earth and all the animals and plants and stuff.
yeah, absolutely. A lot.
I love this. I love fantasizing about what it was like when Adam was on the earth. Hallelujah. Thank you so much for doing this, brother. I look forward to checking the recording out and watching from the beginning.
All right. Well, you and your family have a wonderful week this week, and hopefully I'll get back with some more of this material. And any of you guys out there that are listening in on this, I'd like your 2 cents too. I really appreciated what Brother Emerson brought to the discussion here, because that I knew it was somewhere. I just didn't know where. So I appreciate you bringing that up. All right. Shalom, shalom, everyone.